Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Abundant Thinking. The setup is looking a little bit differently today. I'm currently at home and it is December 31st. This is the last episode that I will be recording in 2025. However, I understand you guys are seeing this 2026 or later. I wanted to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for such an amazing year on the podcast. 2025 has been such an interesting year where I've been able to overcome a lot of self limiting beliefs. I've actually had 90% of the podcast guests that I have had on my show have been in 2025. I've had Lisa Bodell, I've had Mick Hunt, I've had Gary Ridge, Sunil Gupta, Phil Daru, Haley Perlis. All of these people have been this year. And it was crazy looking back because it seems like it was so long ago. And I say to myself, wow, like that was this year, right? I had three UFC fighters all in the beginning of 2025. And I was like, I swear that was in 2024. But I looked at it, I was like, okay, I guess it wasn't 2025. So a very, very good year looking back. I wanted to take some time to be able to look back on 2025 as a year for me as far as podcast highlights go. Thank you guys so much. You have made 2025 amazing for me. Your comments, your support, it's been awesome. For those of you guys that don't know, I did publish a book. It's called Talk Deeper. It's right there in the corner. If you're somebody who wants to take your conversations from small talk to making connections with as many people as possible with understanding nonverbal cues, this is your book. I highly recommend getting it, checking it out. I made it cheap just so you guys don't have to pay too much money. I don't think it's right to charge you guys a heinous amount of money, right? However, it's available on Amazon. It's available as an ebook or audiobook. So whatever you're using, you can find it Audible. All this stuff is on there. Click the link in the bio, click the link in the show notes wherever you're listening to this on, and you'll be able to find it. But highly recommend it. The former CEO of WD-40 endorsed the book. Gary Ridge had him on my podcast, as well as libraries have been buying it as well. So it's been really cool to see the process unfold, and I think 2026 is going to be a great year. So without further ado, here are my 2025 highlights from this podcast. Hope you enjoy it, and I hope you can take something away. Maybe you can see an episode and say, oh my God, I haven't watched that one. Maybe I'll listen to the full version. So yeah, guys, enjoy. You talked about actions very briefly, and I wanted to quote you on something you said on Modern Wisdom because I thought it was absolutely gold. So you said, our mind focuses in on tiny moments we want to extract to tell the stories we want to tell ourselves or others. You said if somebody chooses to adopt the idea that there's no good work and no good jobs out there, what actions does that bring out of you? So if you flip that around, I wanted to ask, is this a premise of useful, not true? Adopting ideas that may not necessarily be factually correct, but it allows you to take meaningful action?
Yeah, that's one of the core ideas that got me to write this book, is that I deliberately adopt beliefs that lead me to take the actions that I want to be taking, even though I know that this belief is not necessarily true. I'm choosing to hold this belief because acting in accordance with that belief are the actions I want to be taking. So, for example, I thought it was important to write this book and that people would like this book and it would help people and it would help me express an idea that was so important for me to shape and express myself because I've thought it vaguely for years and I wanted to solidify it and shape it and express it well. This was so important to me that I just decided this was the most important, urgent thing I could be doing in my life right now. And that's the belief system that helped me jump out of bed every morning at 6 a.m. and do it. Whereas I could have just as easily argued that it doesn't really matter. Few people read it. Who cares? It's fine.
You'll get
Never
it done
mind.
eventually.
Yeah, I'll do it someday after I play this video game. That set of beliefs would have been equally valid, but yet the book wouldn't have been written. So I chose the set of beliefs that had urgency to it so that I could get it done.
And now the entire world, if you looked up my name on Google, the first thing that would come up would be my laundry list of failures. And so it was a disappointing moment for me, but a mentor of mine gave me a piece of advice. And the piece of advice that she gave me was that long-term success comes from short-term embarrassment. if you can do something with it, if you can learn something from it. These failures, they're there to be stepping stones, if we can choose to take those steps. So the step that I took was I started to send this article out to people that I admired, all these people who, I didn't know, but I would literally send them a link to this article and I'd say, hey, would you be willing to give me some advice? I clearly don't know what I'm doing. And I'd send this article out to Oscar-winning filmmakers, celebrity chefs, coaches of professional sports teams, leaders of large iconic companies. And to my surprise, they said, yes, I'll talk to you. And I think part of the reason for that, honestly, Elon, is because I was not approaching them with this sort of idea of, hey, I made it, and I just want to connect with you. It was more kind of like, hey, look at this. I'm the poster child for failure. Can we chat? And I think it was that vulnerability that really ended up sort of creating a form of connection. And each of those conversations, I started to write down what I was learning. And after a while, I started to realize that the things that I was learning in these conversations were not the things that I was reading inside books. They were not the things I learned when I was in college. And so I started to write about it. And eventually those, paragraphs turned into articles. Eventually those articles turned into books. And it kind of put me on this path that I'm on right now. So this article that started out as an embarrassment kind of led me to where I am today.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that so much. And when you were in that, I guess, hard moment of your life, right? When Groupon was tanking and you were, again, the poster child of failure, what made you keep going? Because I can see a lot of people, when they're hitting that low, just give up and not think to themselves, I want to dig myself out of this hole, but kind of feel sorry for themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are two ways to, I think, measure your life. And I didn't realize this until I think probably later in the game than I wish I would have. There's what you accomplish and there's how you grow. And both are really, really important, right? It's not to say that accomplishments don't matter. They do. And if you're after something, you should want that thing bad enough that you want to try to achieve it. However, the game of life is always going to be hits and misses, no matter what. And if you are somebody whose only measure of success is the achievements, well, then that tank runs out of gas very, very quickly. So the other tank of gas is how you grow, right? And are you growing along the way? And the beautiful thing about that is that the misses oftentimes teach you more than the hits. When I sat down with Bill Gates, for example, one of the things he said to me that I'll never forget is that success is a lousy teacher, right? Success is wonderful, but it's actually not a very good teacher. And the interesting thing is, if you look at the ride on Groupon, we had this, massive ascent. We went from, less than $1 million valuation to multiple $1 billion valuation. Then we kind of crashed again, right? But if you look at that ascent and that descent, I probably learned a lot more in the descent than I did in the ascent. In the ascent, I was just trying to hold on for dear life. But it was the descent where it was kind of like, you're showing up to work every day. Things are not going well. I'm trying to lead a team. People are leaving. I'm feeling terrible. And we still got to get through this. We still got to do our work. We still got to make things happen. I learned a lot from that experience, right? And so, if you're willing to use and measure your life in a way that's not just about achievement, but that is about growth, well, then all of a sudden, these moments that aren't necessarily going your way, can sometimes be the moments that are the most valuable in your life.
You were on the Inside the Inspired podcast, and you said, I'm going to quote you here, because I thought this was amazing. When we train, the goal is to get the stimulus needed for an adaptation that we're trying to obtain to be a better whoever. Essentially, this is anti-fragility. You're kind of talking about this earlier, the whole idea that, growing stronger under immense pressure and pain, all this stuff. So in this sentence, when you say stimulus, I think of, pushing yourself to the limit. And when you enter these states of adaptations, you're pushing yourself, right? Because the stimulus is high. And in turn, you're building proof within yourself. That's how I define confidence. You can show up to the gym. I can train with you, Phil, every single day. But if I only give 10%, I'm going to know it. It doesn't matter. I'm still paying you. You know what I mean? But if you're pushing yourself every single day to the limit, you know it. That's where confidence comes from. My question to you, And in this case, when I say stimulus, I'm talking about pushing yourself to the limit. Is the constant pursuit of this stimulus the differentiating factor between cracking under pressure?
Hmm. That's a good one. I would have to say that without understanding of the actual stimulus, without understanding what the intent needs to be at, you won't have confidence in whatever you do. So, yes, at that point in time, if you look back and you say, well, I didn't really give it my all, I didn't really get those adaptations that I was trying to obtain or acquire because the intent wasn't there. So, I do truly believe that confidence is built in the gym, in the trenches, day by day. And with that, you become more capable of winning. No matter if it says it on the scorecards or whatever it is, you won in the process. Nobody, like I said, nobody can take that from you because it is you versus you in that certain situation.
Are there any misconceptions about pressure that you know of in your time talking about it?
I think one misconception is that it's bad. My whole business is to embrace pressure as a performance enhancer. Pressure, now, there's a big difference between anxiety, which some common emotions are fear, worry, frustration, anger. So pressure that is perceived or creates those emotions can be dangerous. Now, again, fear, anger, worry, frustration on the onset for some people can actually be motivating. It ignites you. It lights that match. You tell me I can't, I'll show you I can, right? So that some of that can be igniting. But if the pressure is felt as anxiety for too long, it's very draining of energy. It's the quickest way to burn out. That's when doubts start to rule, right? They're not just balanced with confidence. They actually start to rule over us. So that pressure is not something that's necessarily healthy in the long term. A little bit of it can wake us up. But pressure from expectations that we have on ourselves, well, doesn't that mean you believe in yourself if you think you can do something? So if someone comes to me and say, I have these high expectations, I was just speaking with a female athlete, a soccer player earlier today, and she wants to go pro, and that's pressure. Well, good. It means you believe in your ability to go pro. Now, it's her expectation. It's no one else's, right? Like she started it. She wants it. So people want it for her. It's not imposed onto her. She did it herself. That means you believe in yourself. That pressure is good. So the fact that pressure is bad, I don't believe that because that type of pressure is good. If someone bets on you, people bet on us all the time. People give us promotions at work. People choose us to lead a project. People choose me to be their performance psychology expert. I mean, that's pressure, but it means they believe in me. It means they trust me. So doesn't that mean I'm doing a good job? So isn't that confirmation that I'm doing a good job, that pressure in that form? And then also, I believe that pressure is earned in the same sense. So if you're feeling pressure for the right reasons, you've had success, you have expectations because you believe in your ability, you love what you do, so you want to make something of it, welcome to the club that you want to be a part of. How cool is that? And now pressure is energy. Now, anxiety can, if again, long term, that anxious pressure long term can make you freeze up. But the pressure that we can embrace, that's energy, really good energy to propel us forward so that we'll now even perform better because of that pressure than we would have without it.
I remember for my fight, actually, I had people bet on me, like actually bet on me. Some people lost a lot of money betting on me. But
And
no,
that's okay. I mean,
yeah,
you know, not fun. And that's okay. You remember that they bet on you because they believed in you, and now you're going to recover and show it next time.
Yeah, I actually think these are strangers, so I don't think they knew anything about me. But no, I totally understand your point.
Well, they certainly saw something in you.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. So you mentioned for anxiety versus pressure, you said anxiety, as you described it, as like, fear, worry. You described like actual characteristics and traits. What are some characteristics or traits you can describe about like pressure? Because I feel like when you said the distinction between the two, it was easy for me to be able to tell which one like is anxiety for me. But when you were talking more about pressure, it was a little bit harder because you were giving more concrete examples, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, sure. Um, a great one, let's use the word arousal. So, and I'm taking this not from my personal work, from Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who's the founder of Flow State. He has this great chart and he has anxiety and arousal right beside each other. And so I look at, like we just said, anxiety is fear, anger, frustration, worry. Those would be examples. And I look at as arousal as challenge. So fear makes us retreat. Challenge makes us defeat. So that could be a slight difference in the two. A great example would be like nerves, like butterflies in your stomach. Anxiety would be butterflies. I'll just give a symbolic imagery. Butterflies swarming around all over your stomach, totally not within your control. They're taken over, chaos, doesn't feel good. Or arousal, those butterflies being energy, you taking control of them, putting them in an inverted V like birds fly above, because that's efficient, that's effective, that's energy helping you. So the butterflies swarming around out of control, anxiety. The butterflies getting in turn in an inverted V, energy, good nervous energy that's going to help you to perform. Passion, excitement, competence. That's all part of feeling, aroused. That both, and there's obviously mental and emotional and physical arousal. So does that help you decipher between the two?
Yes, totally, totally.
And I believe, how do we move from one to the other? Because that's a great question that I'll just put out there. That confidence piece. So if we can bring back our strengths, if we can, in the moment, what can I do? What can I have control over? And what do I believe I can be effective in? If we can bring that back to our thinking, that may actually be the ticket to move away from anxiety to arousal.
So Gary, in the beginning of this episode, was talking a lot about invisible opportunities, and some of you might be thinking, like, what does that even mean? Like that sounds so stupid. But let me explain this to you from how I understand it from my experience. So if I know that I have a podcast about mindset, which I do, then I will see more opportunities when I meet people and they tell me, hey, I'm really good with my mindset. That's something that I'm good with. If you don't have the podcast to begin with and the guy tells you that I spend a lot of time improving my mindset, this is what I do, you think to yourself, that's a pretty cool guy. And then you move on to the next and it doesn't matter, right? It's not an opportunity because you don't have the podcast. But with me and me having this podcast, if I heard that, the first thing I would think of is, oh, like, would you want to be on my show? Like, I would love to have you. You seem like a smart guy, etc. So that's just something I can think of off the top of my head. I don't know if you can attest to that at all, Gary.
Yeah, it's like, again, we talked about this, Elon, like you got to get in the arena. Like, why aren't you in the arena? Again, it's an underlying mindset thing, right? The range of what we think and do is limited by what we fail to notice. That's a quote from R.D. Laing, a psychiatrist. And what he goes on to say is that there's nothing we can do until we notice how failing to notice shapes our thoughts and deeds. It's a bit of a mind twister, right?
Yes.
But there's all these opportunities. There's opportunity everywhere. But if you're not looking for it, you're not going to find it. You're going to trip over it 5 times a day. That's really it. Again, this is what we talked about before you hit record. Like, the people who are looking for opportunities, find them. And the people who aren't, don't. So the question becomes, are you looking for opportunities? If not, why not? That's a mindset question. What is it about your underlying beliefs and assumptions about you or about the world around us that's caused you to stop looking? That's where the money is.
Sure. Do you think that entrepreneurship is as much like a self-development journey in and of itself as much as it is like an actual running a business and like getting an income from it?
I said as much in my book, Ilan. I said that like I describe entrepreneurship as an opportunity discovery process. And through opportunity discovery, self-discovery occurs. Yeah, let me say that same thing to you in reverse. Let me turn that statement inside out. In the absence of a compelling goal, in the absence of you striving towards something meaningful, and by the way, it can't be meaningful if it isn't creating value for other people. It just won't get to that level of motivation. You just won't get access to it. That's biology. That's not philosophy or religious. It's biological, right? So ask yourself, Ilan, what happens to a human being in the absence of a compelling goal? You just cannot become all that you are meant to become. And as Maslow said, unless you plan on being all that you can become, you should plan on being unhappy all the days of your life. So let me add, let me kind of take this in a slight tangent, and stop me if I already said this in the last episode. But I define entrepreneurship as the self-directed pursuit of opportunities to create value for others. And the more value you create for others, the better off you'll be, not just financially, but holistically, right? So if I can get a person to get that idea, then I can take you to the next step, which is this. Discovering opportunity doesn't require money. It doesn't require inventiveness or big ideas. It doesn't require any special personality traits. Doesn't require any credential. It doesn't require anything like a fifth grader doesn't already have. Right? You should be able to read and write and count, basically. That's it. Right? If I can get you to that next point, to accept that, there's opportunity everywhere. Discovering that opportunity does not require anything you don't already have. Then we get to the next important question, which is, what's preventing you from making yourself more useful to more humans?
Have you always had the confidence in yourself just from training a lot, or were there times where it was harder for you in the beginning of your career?
It was hard in the beginning. I got beat up a lot, like a lot. But I feel like that's how it's supposed to be. I never wanted to quit. I had nerves going into a few of my fights. Just some of them. Especially in my earlier days where I didn't really know how to strike. So I was mainly just a wrestler and a grappler, and we would touch gloves and I would just shoot and take you down and submit you. It was pulling Hamzat my whole amateur career. So.
That's funny. Yeah. How did you combat those nerves when it did happen?
I feel like I'm always nervous all the way until I get into the cage.
Okay.
Not anymore. Now it's just like a normal thing. But back then I was nervous all the way. When we got in the cage, I was still nervous. You know, they announce your name, then they expect you to do something because they had the camera 2 inches from your face, and like I don't know what to do right now. So, but then once the bell rings, you go and you touch your opponent's glove. I feel like everything around you just shrinks to him. Like it just becomes him, and then like nerves just go away. Now your body's in like a fight or flight trying to kill this guy because he's trying to kill you.
Because I think if you're in a company where busy is glorified, it's going to be hard to break out of that. But I think that's what we call the complexity trap, right? You think that more is better than less. And how you actually get out of that is you actually have leadership that builds in subtraction as something that you get rewarded for. So what I mean by that is groups at like Accenture and my company, for example, we reward people for less. So we actually build into our processes people telling us not just what they're going to do, but what they're going to stop doing. And so that gets them out of that busy trap, because people that are busy aren't always the ones that are adding value. And what simplicity does is it makes it so that the people that are lazy or really just trying to be busy for busy's sake, it exposes them. And the good people rise to the top, and the people that are just trying to be busy, well, they kind of fade away because they're exposed.
Leaders in companies are gluttonous. And even though they feel a lot of pressures, what those pressures turn out to be is they choose too many projects, plans, tasks, and initiatives at the same time. And then there are 1,000 points of pain that come out of the fact that leaders too many things. So people are stretched thin, they don't have room on their plate, they're exhausted, but also they're not doing quality work. They make mistakes. They can't be the same with customers because it's just too much to do. So reductive means, it's like the math version of reduction. You go in and you eliminate, you reduce, you shrink, you cut, you vendor out, you reduce in scope, smaller, 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 smaller. And so if you imagine a backpack that every one of your employees is wearing, if they've got too many rocks in the rucksack, they are not going to be able to climb the hill that you want. And so it is a whole area of professional challenge to get leaders to do this. And then once they're willing to do it, to teach them how. But that is what a reductive mindset is. And we really believe it's the key to liberating people's talent, for sure.
Everybody that's listening to this show right now, the two of us, we both have abundant knowledge about one obscure thing or 5 obscure things or 10 obscure things. Like, I've gone through my life having tons and tons and tons of different hobbies. And when I get into the hobby, I learn everything there is to know about it. And I go deep. And anybody that knows me knows I go deeper than the average bear on every hobby that I've ever been into. I have a friend, Mike, who says I'm 11/10ths on everything. I'm just all the way in plus up. What I meant by that was, and it goes back to what I said earlier about passion, is everybody in the world is very smart about something, and it may not resonate with them to start a business around it. It may not resonate with them to make that their occupation. But when you talk to people like at parties or at gatherings or wherever, if you just be curious and meet people, you'll learn what their passions are. And then sometimes you'll ask, well, what are you doing with that? Oh, I can't do anything with that. I just do that for me. And that's fine for some people, but other people hate their job, but they're really smart about audio equipment. Well, you could start a blog for audio equipment, and on your blog, you could set up Amazon affiliate links or other affiliate links and review products. And I'll bet if you spent a year doing that 1 hour a day or even 4 hours a week, just really getting into that one facet of that one thing, and you were posting religiously about it on a blog or on a YouTube video, you don't need fancy equipment. You don't need anything. You got a phone. Everybody's got a phone. Just start talking to the universe about that thing that you're really into. And before you know it, you have a following. And before you know it, you've got brands reaching out to you to want to do this thing. And I'll bet 2-3 years in, that could be your full-time occupation. And would some people like that? Yes. Some people like to keep things hobbies. And I get that. I've gone on that way too, where my hobby became a job and it wasn't fun anymore. But that didn't take away from the fact that I knew everything there was to know about that particular hobby and had fun learning new things every day. So for me, every human being does a wealth of experience about something. And like finding those people is always fun for me. Like I love parties, talking to people about what they're into. What hobbies do you have? Like that's a question you ask somebody on a first date. It's a question that I ask people at parties because I want to learn what they're passionate about.
You have interviewed some of the highest performers in the world among different industries, whether it's business leaders or athletes. What are the habits that you notice among them?
Elin, what a great question. I have to say, it's so fun to be here. One of my great friends, Dr. Haley Perlis, talks so highly of you. So to be on your show, it's an absolute honor. Thank you, my man.
Thank you.
So habits of high performers. Whoa, I geek out on that. Like that to me is just the most fascinating topic. There's something that separates the great from the greatest, because I think all humans are great. We've all got greatness in us, but some people unleash it. And so for the last 25 years, I've been on this pursuit of figuring out what is it that makes great people great. And I was fortunate in my younger years at 13 to win the World Solo Championships, then again at 14. So I started to kind of figure a few things out then, but Elin, I lost a lot more world championships than I won. And I started going, what's going on with those times where I don't win? What's in my control that I'm not doing very well? And so I started spending a lot of time with the mind, understanding how the brain works, how we perform with pressure. And so over the last, say, 5-6 years, I've went really deep with Olympians, gold medal world champions, prime ministers, F1 drivers, going, okay, what is it? And so there's a few things that came up. One, they get radically clear on what's most important to them. They can tell you exactly what it is that they want to do, how they're going to do it, and when they're going to do it. Second thing, they absolutely supercharge their BS, their belief systems. They say, I believe this is possible. I believe I've got the tools and resources. I believe I can do this. So they're very positive with their self-talk and their belief systems. And I would say the third thing that comes to mind is that they take no shortcuts. They're willing to play the long game. They're willing to just, I started, for example, my podcast, I started it in my bedroom 6 years ago, interviewing people. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to keep going until I've got 100 episodes. Most people that start a podcast give up after 3. You're smashing the game, my friend. Like you're just sticking at it. Let's go. Let's go. That's the way to do it. No, it's brilliant. So they take no shortcuts. They keep going. So that would be the 3 things that come to mind.
Critical piece to being an entrepreneur is that I didn't want to look back on my last breath and wonder what if. And to me, that was a whole lot scarier than failing. And by the way, a business failing doesn't necessarily mean that a human failed. There was a lot of people who, coming out of COVID, just, guess what? Global pandemic wasn't written into their business model. I didn't even know the word global pandemic. It certainly wasn't written into any of mine. Now we know. But I have companies that I work with now, companies that I've worked with in the past that have been in situations that they can't control. And guess what? In this world, we're not really in control of much, but we are in control of our own time, and how we invest that time is critical to the entrepreneurial mindset. And so if you're becoming an entrepreneur because you're watching people who have already gone through hell and back again, and you're looking at the flip side of it, you really need to look in the mirror and double check and make sure that you got what it takes, because you have to take pleasure. Because I'll tell you, after it's all done and the wire hits your bank account, the next day you wake up and you're like, okay, here we are. And it doesn't change your life. But that journey, that path, the people that you meet, the people that you get to work with, the people that you get to learn from, all of those things are things that you encounter along the way that make the journey special. That is the most important piece of the entrepreneurial journey, is the ability to not focus on what has already happened and not focus on what you can't control down the road, but to actually be present in the experience and truly enjoying the journey. Because if you're not enjoying the journey, but you're just in it for what the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, man, you're wasting your most important resource. because as far as I know, no one counts your shit when you're dead. And so that entrepreneurial mindset needs to first understand, why are we here and what am I wanting to do with this life? It's not about making money.
Let's pretend that somebody's listening to this and they're on the younger side and they're like a clean slate. What traits would you give him to maximize his chances of succeeding?
What traits? All right. I think that if I was getting started or I was looking at this person, I would ask them, what they're passionate about and what their dreams are. Because it's like we talked about earlier, you can't have that crystal ball. You still need to know what makes you tick.
Sure.
What makes your brain tickle? What are you excited about? And what's your vision board? And a lot of people don't have a vision board, or they don't have a really defined plan that they've written out about who and how they want to be. So to me, the purpose and who they're going to become is one of the main characteristics that if you accompany grit with, to say, okay, this is who I'm going to be. And that success is not defined by a role or an occupation or money or statue. That's not what I'm really thinking of. Just who are you trying to be as a person? And write that out and have that goal. And then the grit to pursue it. Because let's say you're going to fall 77 times. Are you willing to get up the 78th time? And every time I've ever come in contact with a wall or a setback, the reason why the why is so important that everyone talks about is that when you're pushing through that wall or you're getting up that 77th time, the only reason you're doing it is because of your purpose to achieve that. And that is the reason why you're like, I'm doing this, right? And that's why it's so important, because that emotion is what allows you to respond to that situation. If you don't have that, I don't see why you would push through. You were just told the 77th time, this ain't working out. You're starting to think maybe you're crazy. And everyone is going to think you're crazy until you do the said thing. And then they're going to think you're a genius. So at 76, you're crazy. 77, get to that genius level. But those two things, to me, differentiate. If we're starting with a clean slate, if that person had the vision and dream and ambition of who and what they were going to be, and dream big, aim for the stars, hit the moon, or whatever the expression is, have very ambitious goals, and then that'll drive the grit to get there. And the grit's only going to come through the difficulties. And I think, honestly, that, we've talked in the past that that's really where life is. Those are the moments you're going to remember when you get to the place you want to go. And I can say this because I'm older, talking to this younger person. When you get there, not that I've ever arrived anywhere, don't get me wrong, but I've hit a couple milestones. You'll look back. The only thing you're going to remember is the difficulty and pain you endured to get there. It's the only thing you'll remember. And it will bring you to your knee. It'll bring a tear. It will bring a level of pride that it was all worth it. You made it. And you'll see that, and whether it's a college graduation or a high school graduation, like you'll see these little moments where you cross a milestone and you kind of look back and you're like, I made it, right? So the only thing you will remember is the pain of the journey. But that's what makes it so sweet. And the only way you get through those moments is the grit. And the only reason you grit it out is because you're following that vision.